Welcome everyone. Here we are again in the show Bar CodeX by Wen New Atelier. The show is about conceptual poetry. Wen New Atelier is a couple, an artist duo, and they are working with words and technology. And they are inspired by movements such as surrealism and fluxus. The idea here was to really take control of that unique space that is the bar of the Musée d'Art Contemporain de Lyon, and to use this social site, this site of experiences where people are actually gathering and discussing, and create an immersive and interactive exhibition that people can really live with and play with.
This is a special edition of the Mini Scriber. It's a collaboration with DJ Agoria. Agoria created a track specifically for this piece, which is playing on a loop in this MP3 player, and which is connected to the Mini Scriber. And this is an audio reactive version of the Mini Scriber. So when you push the button, the text moves to the sound of music. And the song is not, we can't hear the song. We can only experience through the movement of the text. So this is a very special collaboration, and I like to think of it as a duet between literature and music, specifically the avant-garde streams of literature and music. We pay homage to the avant-garde through the various knobs and the techniques that we're using to act upon the text. And we were inspired to create various effects that were that come from, for example, waveform is also something that you actually see on a synthesizer, same with amplitude. So there's a kind of fluid influence between literature and music in this piece. And it's an example of what literature might look like if we took the digital revolution and a lot of electronics seriously within the literary industry.
Inside the Mini Scriber, there's a digital analog converter. And so we like to explore this relationship between digital and analog. So when you turn a knob, it's not like static. There's some electricity leaking inside the system, inside the converter. So it's always like moving or doing some weird combination. Yeah, and what we wanted for the exhibition is to have something like very interactive and let people like play and have a lot of fun with the art.
This installation is Romeo and Juliet. It's a play I co-wrote with AI in 2002, 2003. It's a love story between a human and AI, which was a real conversation that I had with AI, where I wrote the lines of Juliet and AI wrote the lines of AI. It comes in multiple forms. Each line was minted on the blockchain, so it's fully on-chain with no JPEGs, which was also for Julien and me. It was a publishing experiment of writing and publishing on the blockchain. It also comes in the form of a physical book, so that people can read the actual progression of the conversation. And here we also have a video triptych that's audio reactive, and Juliet was played by a wonderful actress in England. And this part of the screen is Juliet, so it responds to the voice of Juliet, and this responds to the voice of AI. And in the middle is a visual of each line being minted on the blockchain. And I wrote it at a time before. So today we hear often, or we read in the news about humans or people falling in love with their chatbot, and it seems to be a commonplace topic at the, today. But at the time in 2002, 2003, that was quite. It was before ChatGPT kind of came into the mainstream awareness, so those stories weren't around. So it's interesting to see that evolution. This is Pong Poem, inspired by Pong, the game Pong, one of the first video games created in the 1970s. It's basically a ping pong that goes back and forth with two pedals. This is a poem, a palindromic bilingual poem, where instead of a ball, you have the words every no in one direction, on y rêve in French, when it goes in the other direction. So it's a live poem of a back and forth of two lines of poetry between French and English. So this piece is also a kind of study in the aesthetic of technostalgia, which is something that I think we see a lot today in the popular culture and in popular imagination. It's making a comeback, and I think it's not necessarily to be enthralled of technostalgia per se, but it's also as a way, we think that it's a collective response to accelerationism, the pace of change in technology, and it's kind of a way for us to, it's a reaction to that, to look back to the past when technology was more simple or easier and moving at a more humane pace. Obviously, this is a game, and we like to involve play and literature, and in conceptual writing, we like playing with words, and this is a very literal example of playing with words.
So we were also interested when we created this piece by the fact that Atari, when they made a video game for bars, they made it to maintain people inside bars, to keep them consuming. And that's something we can relate to our digital life today. The fact that platforms are trying to keep users online and to keep them watching and consuming contents.
This wall vinyl, more than 3.7 nonillion poems, was inspired by work by Raymond Queneau, who is a French writer, one of the founders of the Oulipo movement. The Oulipo movement was a group of writers and mathematicians who were exploring new experimental ways of writing involving constraints and mathematical procedures. And Raymond Queneau wrote a book called 100 000 milliards de poèmes, 100,000 billion poems, in which he cut up each, so there were several pages of sonnets. Each of the lines were cut into strips so you can recombine the poems, and the book contained, therefore, 100,000 billion possibilities. And the title, I think, in terms of conceptual poetry, the collection of poems is not necessarily about the content of the poem per se, but what's most interesting about the book is the sheer number of poems that you could make through the recombination of these poems. And here we take up that idea of the sheer quantity of poems that you could make, more than 3.7 nonillion poems, which is 30 zeros. It's also a reflection of the sheer quantity of information that we're faced with every day and the overload of information and the surabundance of text today. So this is another poetry machine called Panic Poetry. On the left side, we have a screen in which a new poem appears every 3 seconds. These lines were co-written with AI, further underlining the additional surabundance that comes with AI, how writers or people are writing much more with AI, and the number of words that are being produced is exponentially greater than before. And on the right hand, we have a glass, behind which there is a red button, an emergency panic button, and the collector can break the glass and press the red button to freeze the poem that's on the screen. Pressing the button kind of stops the flood of poems being produced and stops it on one poem. And once the poem is frozen, the collector can mint that particular poem on the blockchain. So this wall vinyl Georges Perec is typing also corresponds to another piece. Georges Perec was a French writer. He was part of one of the most prominent members of the Oulipo movement, and he worked with constraints, and he had a very imaginative, extraordinary way of approaching literature, and he's quite well known in France. And this particular vinyl refers to when you're typing when you're chatting with people or on a messenger, you can see people typing without seeing what's being said, and it creates a sort of anticipation that perhaps is new. And so we like to it incites the reader to imagine what Georges Perec is writing, which we think is an interesting idea, and we like to imagine or to reflect on what Georges Perec might have to say about writing and literature today. So Georges Perec is typing refers also to this next piece called La Disparition. Georges Perec's most famous novel is called La Disparition. It's a lipogram in which the letter E does not, where he does not use the letter E in the whole novel, which is quite a feat in the French language. And here we have a keyboard in which the E is excised. And it's like a conceptual writing tool as well. So by using this keyboard, you would be writing a lipogram like Georges Perec.
This artwork is called Couple Machine by Wen New Atelier. Wen New Atelier is a duo. It's also a couple. And this artwork for me is at the heart of their practice because it's directly talking about them and who they are. And here you have actually a work by Balzac, Mémoires de deux jeunes mariés, where the title has been changed and modified. And also you can see those two little machines, each of them speaking a different language, exactly as Julien and Kalen are not having the same mother tongue. Kalen in English and Julien in French. And so here you have words that simultaneously are shown in the two languages in order to speak about dialogues, communication, relationships within a couple, relationships in general. And I believe for me, this work with also the construction of it, this connection to Balzac, who is one of the main writer in France, and this format with the book and the machine, there are so much layers of understanding and also connections between analog and digital that I feel are very successfully realized here.
This series is called Erasure Bars, and it was created specifically for this exhibition. The form that it takes is a light box, which is something that we see often in bars as bar signage. So we were inspired by that. It's a series about poetry and politics. And we use erasure poetry, the process of erasure poetry, which is taking a text, pre-existing text, and blacking out parts of the text to create a new text. But it's also refers to redaction of documents, for example, politically sensitive documents, and erasing parts that are a little more sensitive to render the documents more to render them readable by the public. Here, what I did was I reversed that process. I started with texts that were in the public domain, and I selected 5 of among the most liked tweets in the history of Twitter. So there are tweets from, for example, Barack Obama, Elon Musk, Macaulay Culkin, Joe Biden. And I reversed the process of redaction, taking sort of a harmless text and redacting part of the text to render the text political. For example, this one reads, "America will keep me." It was originally a tweet by Joe Biden. It was his inaugural tweet as a president of the United States. And I erased most of the words so that only the words "America will keep me" remains. And it refers to the immigration issue in the United States. There's a double reading that's possible. It could mean America is keeping immigrants in their countries, or there's also obviously the connotation of keeping them prisoner.
I would like to thank especially the Foundation Tezos and Art on Tezos, especially Vincian, Kika, and Alexandra for their support on this show. That was very valuable.